Hi, my name is Brian, and I'm going to go over what a CV axle is, what are the different names for a CV axle, and how do you tell if yours is bad. First of all, I'll show you what a good CV axle looks like. This one is brand new, and I'm going to go over some of the terms on it, and then I'm going to tell you how you can find out if yours is bad. First of all, you've got your boots. This is the outboard joint and boot. This is the inboard joint and boot. This is the inboard because it's one that's closest to the transmission. This plugs into the transaxle assembly. In a front wheel drive car that employs these, you'll have a transmission that's also a differential. So this is what that plugs into. Where the seal is right here, that's the transmission output shaft seal. This little ring right here that you see, kind of a gold color. That is your output shaft dust cover. Output shaft seal dust cover. This little castellated ring here is known as an exciter ring or a tone wheel. Your ABS works with this. There's a little magnetic sensor that sends a pulse as this rotates and switches on off on off on off. And then this is your splines. This whole section is called the spindle, and then this is the spindle nut. It's called the spindle because back in the days where it was rear wheel drive, you had a spindle that the wheel would mount on, and so this is kind of a substitute hybrid design for that, so they still call that the spindle. So what is that? How do you tell if your CV axle is bad? I mean, this one's a good one. Well, what happens over time is that the rubber, typically what fails on cars, fails due to either a lubricant breakdown or a rubber breakdown. But when you look at this boot, you can see that it's a little different in that this is wide open, and what's happened is these have little balls inside. They'll usually either have 3 large balls, or they'll have, in this case, 6. You can see where there's an opening for a ball, 1, 2, 3, and then on the other side there's a corresponding 1, 2, 3. So this one has 6. Sometimes, some applications are better with 3, some are better with 6. 6 tend to give you better efficiency. 3 tend to be able to hold up to high torque better. That's what I've been told. So anyway, here's a good boot on the inboard side. The outboard boot is typically the one that will fail. So if you go to your car, say you're driving along, I'll just give an example. This is my steering wheel right now. Use your imagination with me. So you're driving along and you turn right, and as you turn right, it goes knock, 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 or clack, 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 or tick, 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 tick. Only when you're turning, or when you hit the gas when you're turning, then you know that your left CV axle's bad. Why would it be the left when you're turning right? Well, as you turn to the right, the car leans and puts the weight on the front left. So when it's under load, when that joint with those balls has no grease and it's gotten dirt in there and it's all worn out and it's under stress, that tire on the outside's not going to slip. The power's going to go to that one, and you're going to manifest, the knocking and clicking noise from that side. Same thing when you turn your wheel to the left and your car goes left, it also leans left. When it leans left, all the weight goes to the right side, and as that happens, it'll manifest. So on this car, I did one CV axle. This one is obviously bad, and then the customer got it back, and as luck would have it, the other CV axle's bad too. So I was told that they just needed one, and when this car's on the ground and I looked at it, the way that this one broke, it looked like it was all good. It was all held together like that. So I thought, well, that one's good. This one over here was wide open. But what's kind of an interesting thing about this one is we had a double failure. We had an outboard failure, as you can see by the boot here. If I had light on it. We had an outboard failure, but then when you see the grease that's flung all over through there, we had an inboard failure too. And so, it's just totally ejected, like you see the grease right here, a real fine light grease that you see there, that's CV axle grease. So we've got a double failure, so I'll be replacing that one. To replace the CV axle, I've got a couple of different videos on them. They're really not too bad, especially on a Toyota. Alright, as I was saying, on a Toyota they're pretty easy. You pull the tire off the wheel, And then you pull these 3 bolts and put a pry bar in here, separate the lower ball joint, and turn the wheel all the way so that the tie rod protrudes. So for this one, I would turn the wheel to the right, and by turning the wheel to the right, it'd push this one out and give me plenty of slack. And you undo the spindle nut that's in the center, that's behind here. Once you get the tire off, you pull out the little cotter pin. I have a video on that. It's called pulling out a cotter pin like a boss. Pull that out, pull the spindle nut off, and if you want to break all of that loose, if you can, like pull this cap out and get all the pins and everything out of it, break it loose while it's on the ground so that the tire doesn't just turn. If you do have it jacked up, just have somebody stomp on the brake while you get a breaker bar and just lean on it, stand on it, jump on it, counterclockwise, get it to pull. So anyway, once you undo that part, you can pull this out and lay it out to the side. On this one, it has ABS. You can see the little sensor back here. When I move the light, you'll see it real good. There it is. So you may want to undo the wire for the sensor. Just make sure that you don't have too much stress on your brake hose or on this. You'll find little connectors like this bolt right here. You can pull those off and get a whole bunch of slack if you need it. If you pull it from the bottom, typically you don't need as much slack. And anyway, to get the inboard part of it out, you can see, let me do a little finagling here. You can see that this axle has these little marks on it. See, like right there and right there, they're kind of cut into it. You want to use a pry bar. You put the pry bar between the transmission right here and that little mark, and you just really sharply jolt the pry bar. So you're prying, say the pry bar's stuck up in there, you want to pry this way. You really want to shock it or jerk it or hit it so that it'll pop it out. On the inboard side, you've got a little ring that holds it in there. You see that ring right here? This is the retainer clip, C-clip or CV axle retainer clip. I forgot to tell you the different names of these things. The names on these are CV axle, CV half shaft, or just axle assembly, like front axle assembly on a front wheel drive. Now, what's CV stand for anyway? Why do you keep calling it CV? Well, CV stands for constant velocity. When I turn this, it turns at the same rate, no matter if I have it bent. You know, it's the same, it's smooth. It has a constant velocity all the time through the joint. These are awesome because they're very efficient. They're very low drag, so you can have a good fuel efficient vehicle with these. A lot of the American engineers after World War II recommended going to these, and they actually did a bunch of counseling for countries that we bombed with nuclear weapons and wanted to give them a leg up and support. And the engineer said, use a timing belt, use a CV axle, you'll have a good efficient car. Well, anyway, one country in particular really adhered to that and set the standard. So you look at like an old Dodge Colt or something, they had them way back in the day. Kind of interesting, huh? That gave you the history, the anatomy, how to diagnose. What more could you ask for? What an amazing video this has turned out to be. So I hope you like the video. They had one more thing. When you go to install a CV axle, if you put some grease on the end, it'll help that clip to center. Now what I'm talking about is if you go to drive that in and it's sticking down like that, it won't go into the transmission. You'll beat it and round it and cause all kinds of damage. It won't go in. But if you put a little grease on here, a little grease for the seal, it'll just pop right in there and the clip will center. It'll be in the middle so that it'll hold it so it doesn't block it. Anyway, like I say, if you like the video, click subscribe. It's the gray button above. If you want to watch this video later or something, you can add it to favorites, add to down arrow. And when you get to your buddy's house to do this, be able to access the video and check it out. If you like it, click thumbs up. If you don't, click thumbs down. And thanks for watching my video. Cheers.